Okay.
Welcome to the program.
Hey. Hello. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to this program, which is a dialogue on tradition and contemporaneity, engaging improvisation, and Mr. Lacina Coulibaly. And my name is Dr. Celia Weiss-Bambara, and I'm director of coordinator of the dance program at Coppin State. And we are engaging this as a live dialogue, which is also being streamed in a modern contemporary class at Coppin State, where we also do engage in improvisation as part of our practices. So what I'm going to do really quickly is give a discussion of just kind of a description of Mr. Coulibaly's background and his biography. I need to give a little direction to students first so that they have some devices, because we're not also projecting this. So if you all who are here, if you can open up your devices, because we're going to show some video, you can go into the link in which this is being offered and make sure that it's on mute, and that way you can watch the video too, because we're not also projecting it. Okay. Thank you. So Lacina Coulibaly was born in Burkina Faso. His professional dance career is deeply rooted in African traditional dances, later merged with European contemporary influences to create a uniquely African choreographic expression. In 1995, Lacina created the award-winning company CIE Congo Bataria with Suleiman Badolo and Ousseini Sako, which toured extensively in Europe and the US. He has also danced and choreographed with several international dance companies, including Salia and Seydou, Faso Dance Theater, Cheche, Urban Bushwoman, and collaborated artistically with such artists as Emily Coates, Amy Sullivan, Wendy Jalen, Kota Yamazaki, and Seydou Coulibaly. He has also served as associate choreographer to the project Engagement Féminin, a training program designed to encourage female dances in Africa, initiated by company CIE, Auguste Bienvenu, and he is currently the artistic director of Compagnie Artistique Hakili Sigi. As an educator, an experienced educator and teacher, Lacina has taught at numerous universities and is currently a lecturer at Yale University and Sarah Lawrence. So let's just take a second to welcome Mr. Coulibaly, who is an artist in residence at Coppin State University. And today, actually, is a project that we've been working on for a minute, doing production meetings with another artist named Jessica Ray, who is a film artist and choreographer. We would also be working on a dance film, engaging ideas of mindfulness and listening in our variety of communities that we're also sharing in the production process with Coppin students. So something that's very exciting. We're going to start this out with just some questions. It's going to be a comfortable dialogue, and Lacina has already let me know that if he doesn't want to answer a question or doesn't feel a question, he's going to just let me know I can't answer that question. So it's going to be, I think that's kind of how it's going to move out. So we generated some of these questions together so that they would highlight his process and practices and kind of provide a space to speak about some of the depth of his work. So my first question for you, Lacina, is what is improvisation for you? And do you have any ways that you like to talk about improvisation?
Thank you, Celia. And it's really a pleasure to be part of this program and to be able to talk about my dance, about improvisation, about contemporary dance, about traditional dance in Africa, traditional or contemporary. We have both in Africa, and especially where I'm coming from, Burkina Faso. So Burkina Faso seems to be the center of contemporary dance in West Africa, not all Africa, in the West. So about improvisation.
So I'm going to repeat these questions for you because you just gave all that wonderful background information. Is what is improvisation for you? And do you have a way that you like to talk about improvisation? Given that like Burkina is this complete artistic center in West Africa that also links Europe and the US, right?
Yes.
So it's an important perspective. Yeah, yours is an important perspective.
About improvisation, to talk about it, it's because in improvisation, there is, from my background, I have two ways of improvising. In contemporary, it's different. In traditional way, it's also different. And in traditional, it's really based on your ability of playing with the rhythm. And in contemporary, I will use more about the space, and also it's depend with the intention I have, and that's what generate movement. And also in improvisation, there is a matter of how much you know about the body, because dance is based on movement. And the more you know about your body, the easier you can just use your body to create different figures or to generate movement as much as you want, depending on the context you put yourself to improvise. I don't know if I asked your question.
You answered all of my questions. I think that one of the things that kind of we started talking about that I kind of want to segue this to and then go to the next question is this kind of bodily knowledge. Like, how is there kind of a somatics, I'm going to use that label, right, of understanding the body that happens through West African improvisation? Like, if you could put your finger on that, right?
For my part, it's I have another way of thinking about the body, and then how I really divide the body. And I did some research, and from in Mali, there is a secret society called Comment, and they have a way of how they break down the body. And what they did, they just break out the body in 6 parts. Which is like head, the 2 arms, legs, and then sex. There's a head to create, arms to manipulate, legs to locomote, and sex to procreate. But I just saw that, but in dance, I was thinking how it could help me, because they are not even talking about the spine. And that's all the thing that I was saying, okay, how do I think about the spine? Just the way they just break, they divide the body. And then I think organizing the way they just divide in 2 centers, which is what I call the sternal center. The sternal centers, you really take arms and then head. Arms and head is the extension of the sternal center. And then I also talk about the pelvic center. And then the extension is the legs. So it's kind of with how they divide in 6 parts. I just divide, I just reassemble it in 2 centers. And then I'm just always using the 2 centers to just play how I organize movement. And in African dance, it's like traditional dance, how I understand it, it's I did my research again, and then I'm kind of writing about what is principle in African dance. And doing my research, watching different type of dance on YouTube, even going to different, I've been in Mali, in Benin, in Africa, to be able to just watch different way of dancing. And what I also realized that there is 3 principles I can see from all the form of dance I can see. I also watch South African dance in YouTube, because I couldn't travel there. So I thanks to the internet, you can see different traditional dance. I also saw dance from Rwanda. And for me, it's what I was able to see is like three principles. One is called Sigi. I name it Sigi, and Sigi means to sit. But when all the name is in Bambara, it's African language that I speak very well, and with that language, it really makes sense because depending to the language you master, it's not just word. Where word can also uh, can generate image in your mind. But if it's a language just learn, it's totally different how the word can also
Affect memory.
yes,
too.
affect
Yeah.
memory.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to put words into your mouth.
Yeah, no, it's okay. And Sigi, it's like what you said to sit, but in Bambara, it's meant to sit, it meant to root, it also meant to anchor, to integrate, to embody, to inhabit, to incarnate. So depending to the context, the word Sigi can mean a lot. And the idea is like how we just sit, because when we think about sitting, depending with some society that just create another way of sitting, because like with elite people, you have a way to behave. So it's also great, but the real, if like a kid, when we think about kids, they did not get influenced by the society yet. So the way of sitting, it's the same. And why the sit? Because if we sit, we incarnate all the direction. That is upward, downward, forward, sideways, sideward, and also backward. That's why the word to sit really means a lot. And the second principle is named Tama. Tama means to walk. But in Bamana, the word Tama is not just one word, it's a sentence, a phrase. Ta-a-ma. And ta means to go, a means towards, ma means agent or something. So for Tama means walk to go towards something. If we think about it, also means that it's where we start to create a relation, because to make a relation, you need to leave your space to go to another space to be able to encounter someone. Also, why there is no relation. And it's also the principle of, it's the relational principle. And maybe I should go back with Sigi. Sigi is the incarnation principle. Tama, to walk, is the relational principle. And we also know when we start walking, we start to create a relationship between all the members we have. Like my arms, my feet, legs, there is a relationship between them. And what allowed me to move from one place to another. And in this relation, we have a kind of, we have opposition between the two legs. And they're opposed because one is going forward and another one just standing to be able to hold the weight. And even if there is also a kind of complementary, because if they don't complement, it's difficult to start over, because with walking, there is a cycle of stepping with right, left, and then right again, left, right, left, right, left. That's why we can just go from one place to another. And the last principle is follicing. Follicing means rhythm. But a lot of people, when you talk about rhythm, people start thinking about drumming, playing. It's like music, but in traditional perspective, rhythm is just a way of organizing. And the policies are the principle of organizing. It's the organizational principle. And it's just, and I will say dance is a way of organizing movement or gesture. It's like, just can just be, I'm just organizing. I'm not even thinking. And then with the rhythm, there is this idea of cycle, because with rhythm, it's like, if it's not cyclic, it's like the rhythm doesn't stop. And one rhythm can generate a lot of rhythm. So it's, and anything that you organize and you can repeat, it also means there is a rhythm. And even if to talk, we have a rhythm. When we walk, we have a rhythm. And even if any school has its own rhythm, any town has its own rhythm. So it's rhythm is it's everywhere. Even if we think about human being, any human being is polyrhythm, which means the heart waves. In English, we say heartbeat, but it's not really a beat, because a beat is a pop, 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 but it's with the heart like boom, boom, pop, 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 which is a rhythm. And also the way we breathe is also a rhythm. So we have two rhythms that it's polyrhythm. There is one we can control and another one we cannot control. Life is also about that. There is things that we can control. It's beyond our control. And there's other things that we can also control. So it's like the heartbeat is something that you don't control. Relating to emotion, it can speed or it can be normal. If you're slowing down, it's also scary, because it's also mean that there is something not going well. But the breath, I can just extend, I can speed it. It's the breath I can control, but the heartbeat is something that you cannot really control. So it's about improvisation. I'm not even thinking about the principle, because I've been using it. It's part of my way of dealing with my body. And if I'm improvising, it can really be about the rhythm. How do I play with the rhythm? Because in improvisation, I'm not really thinking about how I use my body. It's something that I already integrate in my mind. And it's just a matter of how I play with rhythm. I always have a rhythm that I'm thinking about it, that's allowed me to just keep creating, keep organizing the movement in different ways. I can use the same movement, and then how I organize, play with rhythm. People see different movement patterns. And for me, dance is not really about how beautiful is your shape, the shape of the movement you are making. For me, dance is really about the musicality you can create through your way of moving. It's also the rhythm, because I start thinking about it, because usually when I'm in Africa and people are dancing, and if there is something you are dancing and people cannot, there's something that doesn't work, people just close their eyes, because even if you are dancing, for those who really know what is traditional dance, they can also hear the rhythm from your dance. And sometimes people even say, like, to dance, make sure people can hear the rhythm. But it's a movement. But when you say it's possible to hear the rhythm, and it's because musicians can hear that, that's why they can also respond to the music you're playing, or they can also support. They can support your rhythm, and they can also
Drive it in another way.
yeah, I think the dance, they can support and they can also respond to what you are.
I feel like you've just provided like so much incredible information about your practices that's kind of interweave this idea of somatics and African traditional and contemporary dance within the context of your own work, right? And really define some of the principles that you're working with, which is like a whole other set of questions you're going to delve into, but you just like, I think naturally went through that, right? Which is awesome. So I just want to like just kind of cap that and move on to a next question, because it felt like what it sounded like too is that there's this really unique interweaving between the being in the body and the understanding of the body's alignment and movement structure, right, with the cultural context, right, and the interplay of both rhythm and being, yeah, and also sets of memories, and then also these kind of linguistic cultural knowledges, which kind of are all embedded together in how you are moving as an improviser, but also making as an improviser. Yeah. With that, does that kind of feel like a natural way of summarizing it and moving on to the next question? Okay, cool. So just a different kind of configuration of things. And this one, I think we have maybe time for one more question, maybe two, and then some video. Does that feel comfortable? Okay. So this is the one that we were both like, okay, how do we feel about this question? So how does your identity, which is some of you already touched upon, like you are Burkinabe, you are Sinufo, you are from an area near, families from an area near Mali, you speak Bambara, right? I've worked in Ouagadougou, worked in the United States, traveled over the world doing your work, but your identity is a complex one, right?
Yes,
so
yes, it is.
How is your identity and your improvisational practices speak to each other, right? So, and I think that that's a hard question, but also an easy question. Yeah. So there's complexity, but like, what is that dialogue for you? Which I feel like you already started speaking to.
Yeah.
But
yeah, my identity is really complex because coming from Burkina Faso, it's where my identity is really rooted into, or it's like, I would say like, I embody West Africa, like West African culture, because no matter if I go to Benin, I don't feel like I'm a stranger there. I just feel like it's my tradition, it's the same way. Because, and in terms of movement, the language is the same. Maybe the spoken language, there is a difference because I cannot understand what they're saying, but any movement, I can read it. And for me, even if I think about life itself, any human being need to root himself or herself to something. That's how you just, and then after we need to just grow, we need to just interact with other people. So we root, and then we found a way to create a relationship with other people where we just learn something else, and then we share it. This is life. And then if with all of that, we also need how we organize ourselves in life, because no matter what, how well rooted you are, how many relationships you have, if it's not organized, you cannot make anything out of that. So life itself, it's the way with, even if in Africa, you just go, you ask people, all people, what is dance? They just say dance is life. And sometimes, like at the beginning, I was even confused, but doing more research regarding to the principle, life itself, it's the same.
Yeah.
You need to root to something, you need to create a relationship, and then you also need to organize all of that to just be healthy or wealthy. So, and for me, it's the same way it just go. Even if my practice, it's always go same, because dance is life. So life is also dance. But it's, there is what we can say a serious way of dancing. We can also say if like to dance and have just fun. And then my life itself is like, it's a serious way of dancing, which is how I well organized. And then where I also know where I'm coming from, how do I use those principles to be able to engage with other people. And there is also things that I learn from other people. And then I think how this new thing can fit to who I am, because it's always about that. Sometimes if you don't be careful, you did take something and it just shifts you in another way of dealing with things, and you even get lost. So it's like we also need to know what we are taking and then why we need that, how it could uh, uh, lift up what we already have. If you are taking something that will just put you down, I don't see the reason of using it. And for me, it's all of that. And everywhere I just go was my idea of there is the principle of relationship. There is always something that you create, and then how do you use it? And it also go back to see how do you embody that new thing. And then it's always, and for me, dance is always, now my way of dancing, I always have to, it's go with like intention. What is my intention? And then I will let the intention just generate movement. And then learn the fact that I also have my rhythm I'm listening. And then the rhythm will help me to just organize those movements. So it's,
I think two of the things that came out for me when you were speaking about this is this kind of a sense of really strongly who you are and your space from where you come from, but then all of these complex experiences you've had as not only a mover, but as a learner, right? And how you've chosen to organize your life and the way you also engage other humans in that process, right? As kind of, for me, of course, this is the word that I like, interculturalism, but the sense of that too is like, how do these other aspects of other cultures, right, or ways of learning and doing, then also what's useful to you, right? Right? What's useful in a positive, constructive way, right? That's not going to then overshadow you and your set of really complex experiences already, and also your kind of mission and intention, right? Is that, and then I think the other thing that I'm kind of hearing too, which is really beautiful for me to hear too, as a fellow improviser, and I feel like we've been talking about this for a while, but like, is this idea of when you're making, right, or when you're improvising, but there's all of this, part of your toolkit, right, is this layered thing. So there's rhythm, there's the intention of the improvisation, there's the music that you're working with at that moment. There might be some memories, there might be some cultural tapestry that you're playing with in all at the same time to generate something new, right? Or something that is useful for you, right? I think new is like, okay, discovery, well, that's a weird concept, right? But a new entity, which I think this is the last question we should kind of just focus on, is this all to me kind of drives towards this idea of process, right? So your process that you, as an artist, right, when you're making, you engage improvisation, right?
Yes.
So I think it might be useful just to kind of hear more from you about your perspective on that, right? On process and improvisation, because people have, it seems to be, particularly within the postmodern dance world and also the global contemporary, people have very different conceptions of the relationship between those things. And it's also, there's also someone, it's like, oh, set choreography is choreography, improvisation is not choreography, making with improvisation. So there's these kind of layered ideas of what is choreography too, which are also cultural. And I feel like when we speak to some of our process as artists from all of our individual perspectives, it permits us to see the vast diversity that's out there and how rich it is.
But the thing is, if we talk about choreography and improvisation, like everything you just improvise, there is a kind of choreography in it, because choreography, I'm thinking about a way of writing. And you can do your choreography where there is no improvisation, or you can do your choreography and there is also improvisation in it. And most of my work, I always leave a space where it can be improvised. But there is also improvisation. With improvisation, I'm thinking about playing.
Mhm.
But even if you play, each play also have his own structure. How do you, and even if there is a structure, you also have your own trick that will allow you to play well.
Mm, 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 mm.
And it can also be your own style.
Mhm.
And there is sometime when I'm improvising now, the way I just like the level I have in dance, in improvisation, I can, if I'm improvising, I also know I'm improvising on what. Maybe the video I'm going to show, it's the improvisation was based on the idea of, for me, thinking to be like a lion,
Mm,
thinking
mm,
to
mm.
be a warrior, thinking to be a hunter.
Mm, mm, mm.
And those characters would just lead me to hold my body in a different way, even if the way I walk.
Mm, mm.
And then that's just create a kind of emotion. And then now I say, okay, I have an emotion, let's just play with movement because my body, I create a kind of tension to my body. Then it won't allow me to do certain things easily. And there is other thing that is part of my way of moving. But the thing that I embody, I want to be able to do those form of movement. Because for me, if I'm thinking about being a king, a lion, maybe doing undulation won't cross my mind because I'll just say I always need tension to just stand a warrior, let just be
Embody that.
straight, embody that.
Mm, mm.
And then once I embody that, my way of moving will totally change.
Mm,
And if I'm thinking about I'm a snake, to improvise, the movement will have different quality.
mm,
So for me, improvisation, it's about playing and it's about what do you incarnate that create a way of holding the body. And then if you start improvising, then you start the game, there is different thing. It's like, if my game is playing soccer, I know I'm just using my feet to play with the ball. If my game is about basketball, I know I cannot use to play the ball, I have to use my hands. So it's depending what do you incarnate, and then the way of playing the game totally change. And for me, improvisation is like, it's about that. You just go, a game is always, people always improvise in the moment, but it also, before you be a good improviser, you have to train yourself with different things. That's why the idea of interacting with other people, you learn a lot of way of
engaging.
engaging your body. And when you're improvising, no matter what the emotion you embody or you incarnate, you always find a way to move.
This idea of, even when you're doing solo work, there's still this idea of being with other people, because there's the traces of that. Right. And that's what I'm hearing from you. Sorry, I kind of completed a few sentences for you. I hope that's okay. So I'm not overstepping. Let's go ahead and show some of your video work.
Yes.
Does that feel all right?
Yes.
And then you can let me know when to pause that. Does that feel?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So there we go.
Yes.
This is a good spot.
Yes.
So beautiful work. Thank you for sharing that with us. Do you want to speak a little bit to this project and what you've recently received funding for it too, which is huge. So maybe a little bit about the venue too.
Yeah. As from this work at what I just talked about, the principle, anyone can just see it. And I did not try to just do any fancy movement. It's just different way of working. And then how I just cut them and then play with the space, it creates something else. And even if I take every part, anyone can do it. It's the movement, it's like simple movement, just different way of walking sideways, walking, making a turning, watching back, and then but what also changed the whole thing, it's the state of being I embody, it's also part of it. And you will also see it, I'm always engaging front. And this is also, if you are a warrior, you always just watch front, like your, what you call your opponent, make sure you just can see your opponent. And even if you are a lion and then you have your prey, it's like you focus on it. This like the work is, it's about that. You will just see the titles like Until the Lion Tell the Story, There Is No Glory. It's also a way of for me to respond to certain things politically, because people start to create a kind of movement about to decolonize the body, to decolonize thing. And I just sit and I was thinking what that really meant for me. And I couldn't respond because for me, I have no idea how to decolonize anything. But instead of trying to decolonize it, I say, okay, for me, it's not a question of decolonizing anything. It's just a question of reappropriate things. Like with colonization, I was far away from certain practice in traditional way. I say, let me go back for it. Let me reappropriate that. And for me, because I'm thinking to decolonize, it's fighting maybe with myself. There is something I embody to decolonize. I have to get rid of it. I say, well, this might be maybe a fighting for myself, but let's just go. Think that I believe that this is what I did, and I was far away from it. Let me embody that. The more I embody, I appropriate my own culture. I believe that another culture will have influence on me anymore. So for me, it's like, maybe it's also a way of decolonizing, but thinking differently. I take this and then I embody, I want to be that. And if I'm that, I'm not this anymore. So this is, the work is really about, and it's also a way of telling the story that is coming from Africa. You see the beginning where I start, I put my hand. This is an idea of thinking about ancient Egypt, how like the god used to be. And there also a way of just, it's for me, it's like a it can even be a meditation posture, standing up. And this is also about, and also we know in Africa, we always, the king and then like the lion symbolize the king as well. And then I'm also just playing that how I just put my focus on things. And the work did not get any fun. I work without fun, and I supposed to just be part of APAP and
Association of Performing Arts Presenters. Yeah.
Yes, New York Life Art gave me a chance to just do it there. So thanks to BT John and all the team working there. And I started just doing my work, and they also gave me a studio space to be able to rest there. And I was also rehearsing at Yale, because at that time I was teaching at Yale, so I can also use the studio there. And I was also teaching at Sarah Lawrence. I could also use the studio there. So I was just putting everything together, and then I present that work. It's still a work in progress because I'm still missing 2 scenes in this work. It's for now, it's 25 minutes. So I'm missing 2 scenes. It might go to 40 minutes. And the work, and now like New York Life Art is just giving me 2 years residency to work more, 1 year to keep doing my research, and then the 2nd year to finish with lighting, costume, and all the stuff. So I'm really grateful. So I will really put myself to just make it better than what you saw. This is still a work in progress for me.
Congratulations, Lacina, for all the hard work and for the beautiful work and for the great opportunities through New York Live Arts. Yeah, I'm really excited to see the final work. I think what might be good, we have about 5 minutes left, is to open it up to the students in this class and see if they have any questions for Lacina. about the work, about the improvisation? If not, I will ask you another question. I absolutely will not hesitate to do that.
Okay, no
Um,
problem.
So do we have any questions for Mr. Coulibaly? No? Okay. So I think my last question really is kind of like, after seeing this work, I'm thinking really, really like the thing that kind of caught my attention too is you obviously are kind of thinking about kind of playing with props too, right? So there's this water bottle thing there. So
Yeah.
you're also playing with this idea of set design, and then you have this music and costuming that you're playing with too. So every time I see water bottles like that, I always think of like, water bottles on the street in Africa. Same thing way I see tires, like it just kind of does this thing for me,
Mhm.
right? But maybe you could speak a little bit to some of those choices, and that can be our last question,
Yeah.
or what you're thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah, there is some scene that I like. The second scene, you will see I was start to just play with the bottle of water and then
Mhm.
putting in and constructing, because I did some research about ancient Egypt. There is something that they call Fibonacci
Mhm.
sequences,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of building that. And I think it's like, for those who just get a chance to do some more research, you also see ancient Egypt, they have been using that way of, even if how they just built the pyramid, it's also they just use the same way how they use things to really be, they
Sequencing.
call the golden ration.
Mhm.
So it has been used by ancient Egypt, but we
Interesting.
also know about how things just go. And when you just privilege people, just always say, okay, you created, but it has been ancient Egypt, they have been using that. And then I also kind of building that, and I always go with like one square, and then the square will also, like I go with one square, and then I add another square, it becomes a rectangle. And then after, I always take the largest size to create another square. So it's always getting, that's called the magic rectangle. So after that, I will just play with that. And I will think about water, but, and my ideas are how I'm going to use water on stage, because I don't want to be, the fact that I want to move, it might just be another problem. And then that's why I start thinking about the bottle of water, then people can see the water, and it also helps to visually to just create this magic rectangle, how I just built it. People can just see how it's done on stage. And why water? Because my research about, for ancient Egypt, when they wanted to just build the pyramid, they couldn't figure out how in geometry they can just measure things. And they start thinking about different things to measure all the fruit. But each time, depending with the season, the fruit can just grow bigger or
Yeah.
thing. And then they measure a drop of water. And anyone can try. You just take a pen, you just put in water, a drop, and then you measure it 1 centimeter. I couldn't believe that. And sit and say, wow. And then they measure that. And so that's why the idea of using water to be able to just remind people just use water to be able to measure things. And at the same time, thinking it makes sense, because human beings, like, we have maybe, I think it's almost like 80 or 82, or I don't know if it's something, we have a lot of percentage of water in our body. And maybe that's why the body itself is like, geometrically, the body itself is well structured. You just take the body, you divide, the proportions the same, like the symmetry, it's like, you say, wow. And then maybe it's because that we have a lot of water, that's why things is really well, geometrically, it's really well structured. And I think this is also the idea of everything that I do, it's really based on body. When I'm thinking about time, it's related to the body. When I'm thinking about space, it also relates to the body. And everything for me in dance, anything I'm doing, it's like my orientation, I'm always thinking about my body. I'm not thinking about the studio I'm using it. I always need, where is my front? If I have my front, and then, but I'm also using the idea of circle because it allowed me to just play, because for me, everything just cyclical. So the idea of circling,
There's a lot of geometry in this.
yeah.
And then I think one of the things, and I'm just going to summarize, and I think we should close this up if that's okay, is this kind of sets of ideas like this internal bodily knowledge, but then also you're reaching out to the MENA, really, this northern, like Egypt's part of Northern Africa, to kind of tap into some of their knowledge, right? And also using what is useful to your creative projects, and also envisioning that as kind of Africanness, right? So it's not just it's kind of this larger vision of what Africanness is, right? With also these other trappings and materials. So I think it's really exciting work and fascinating discussion. Thank you, Dr. Scott. So thank you, Lacina. Mr. Coulibaly.
This is what.
Yeah, this is David Scott, who is on faculty here in the humanities program. He's a philosopher, an English scholar. And he also writes on, Dr. Scott also writes on experimentalism in the Black diaspora. So. Thank you all who are listening in. We're super grateful. Students, thank you for being here and being present and kind of working on some of this information. And thank you so much, Kelly, for creating a platform. I know you're incredibly busy right now.
Thank you, Kelly.
We're really grateful. I'm really grateful. Thank you from Cup and Dance program. And I hope you all have a beautiful rest of the week, and wish us luck with our dance film production today, which will be
Yes.
shared with the campus community later. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, thank you. This concludes the program.